It was an early noon at the monastery of Spinitzu. Kai was approached by both Cole and Sane. They asked him if he could help them to carry some boxes, and since Kai had already taken care of his chores already, he's like, sure, why not? I'm all done with my work already, so he went with them and grabbed some boxes and helped them. After they were done, they both thanked him for his help and it's like, no problem, anytime. Afterwards, he went to his training area to do some sparring against himself. But after he was training for a little bit by himself, he later was approached by both Sane and Lloyd. They asked him if it was okay if they were doing some sparring with him, and he was like, sure. But then he asked them if they were okay doing some sort of competition, like two of them against him, to see who could beat him. But Lloyd, who was very much honest about it, he told him that it didn't seem fair to just two against one, but Kai said this is just only like a training exercise. Even though Sane himself also agreed that this wasn't actually a fair training, but Kai made a point. Like in an actual battle, if there was two enemies, the enemy wouldn't even care if there were two against him. That statement made both Lloyd and Sane to think, and they agreed. So they start training against each other. So they trained for about an hour. After about an hour, both Sane and Lloyd managed to beat Kai. And after they were finished, they were actually approached by Pixel and Naya. Both the girls actually told them to stop acting like kids like this, or to stop just acting childish. But Kai just made a point that this was just a normal training exercise. But Naya, his sister, told him that it didn't no matter what they do, it's just unfair two against one. But he made the same point when he told both Lloyd and Sane that if an actual battle, if he was fighting against two or maybe four enemies, they wouldn't even care if it was a fair or unfair battle. That made her realize he was right. So she apologized. But he said he understood her comments and completely agreed with her. Afterwards, he decided to go back into Nyago City to just hang out with his girlfriend, Skylor. They had already made plans to meet that day afterwards, and Skylor and Kai had been dating for about 2 years. And ever since when he asked her out, she was just quite excited. After all, she's the master of element of amber, which is the element of fire. And they were meeting up at a small cafe where they're just having a small date. They were just having a good time together, just talking about some old adventures and old experience like that. But there was just one thing about this conversation that Kai came to realize. Even just being with her for 2 years, he knows that Skylor is actually his true soulmate. But he hadn't even told this to anyone. And he just hopes one day soon that he will be able to confess his true feelings to Skylor. But after they left the cafe, suddenly they were walking by the road. Suddenly there was a commotion. Both Skylor and Kai looked around and saw it was a group of hypnobraid snakes that was causing some commotions. They were trying to steal some food, but Kai looked at Skylor and she nodded and she brought up her own weapon and himself. They literally rushed into them, to this hypnobraid, to stop them. And then they put up a fight, since there were 5 of them against 2 ninjas. But since they were both skilled at using their own elements and their own skills, after about a moment or so, they had managed to defeat the old hypnobraid, and after they were defeated, they just took off without the food. The store owner thanked both Kai and Skylor for help. He wanted to give them something as a gift as for the help, but both Kai and Skylor said that they didn't have to. But he insisted, so they took each a drink as a thanks, and And Kai said if something would happen again, just don't hesitate to call for us if we are in the area. The store owner thanked him. And as they were walking away, Skylor made a point. Why will they never stop causing problems in Yago City? Can't they just, for once in a single day, causing any problems? And Kai, who laughed and said, as if that will happen. I mean, well, when will they ever learn not to cause any problem like that? He said while taking a sip of his drink. She laughed and said, unlikely. I mean, you know how they are acting like. Yep, that's pretty sure, said Kai with a laugh instead once again. And they just having a good time. But there was a lot of things about this that Kai also hoped maybe just one day it would just be in a peaceful town without any big problems. But even though, for the next couple of days afterwards, back in the monastery, Cole and Lloyd told Kai that they heard about this commotion back in Yago City a few days earlier, that he and Skylord had stopped a group of Hypnobrai. And Kai's like, yeah, you know, the daily life. And I can't see why it happened. And both actually thought, yeah, I mean, they can always cause a problem, but if we can just understand, just leave Ninjago City alone, just simply leave. But it was sometimes not that simple, they thought. One day, only about a few days after this, Skylord came over to the monastery to do some training with Kai after he invited her. After all, the others were mostly gone at the time. There was only him, Skylord, and Jay at the monastery. They were just training on themselves when Jay, after being training for maybe just a half an hour or so, when he came out and asked if they wanted to have something to eat, and he had cooked something for them all. And Skylord said, yeah, it would be good we take a break since we had been practice for over half an hour, and she was actually getting a bit hungry. So, and Kai said, yeah, a little piece of food can actually don't want hurt. So they actually went in the kitchen and had something to eat. While they were eating, Jay asked Kai about one particular topic that made him really off guard. So, Kai, have you thought of, proposing to your girlfriend? And as she was sitting next to Kai, and Kai was like, proposal? Dude, we've only been dating for 2 years. Well, is it even that time enough for you to just tie the knot and settle down? Jay, I mean, I know that you are dating my sister by this point as well. I mean, haven't you thought the same? Actually, yes, I am. That took Kai a bit of surprise. Wow, I did admit that you would honestly admit that. Well, what can I say, said Jay with a smile. Afterwards, they just enjoyed the rest of the food together and just have a good time. But afterwards, when Skylord and Kai went back to the training area to do some more training, he noticed that Skylord was blushing, and he asked her if something was okay, if she was feeling well. She nodded and said, yeah, she was okay, she was still a little bit shocked after Jay's comment about them getting married soon. But she agreed they only been dating for 2 years, and they didn't know if it was even that serious between them. Kai was a little bit taken aback. That words hit him very much hard in his heart. He was like, don't you think we can be that serious? She had actually a little bit surprised and said, of course I do. I mean, we just been dating for 2 years. We don't even know, I mean, it's a little bit too rushed to enter in a marriage, even if you just been dating for such short time. Don't you think so? Yeah, you have a point. I mean, I had to be. If I would be lying if I didn't say that I haven't thought of get married at one point and start a family. But I only would, only when a time when we are both had been in a long-term relationship and as we both would be ready. I mean, if I was ready and you weren't ready, I would have been a little bit sad, but I would agree to it. As long as we both are happy and that we both of us are decided to want to do this. Skylor nodded and said yes. They went back to their training and things like that were a lot actually. But for the next several weeks after all this, Kai was actually having a lot of thoughts of him marrying Skylor. And he even had several dreams sometimes at night where he actually were at a wedding and he and Skylord was tying the knots officially. And some dreams that when they have a group of kids together. Every time when he wakes up in the morning, he always had a smile because he very much enjoyed these dreams. But he just doesn't feel ready to settle down right now. He told himself maybe that if this still be together for another as after 5 years or so, that would be enough time for him to ask her for the marriage. So for the next several months after this, he actually had this idea in his mind. And after just one day after a lot of practice between Lloyd and Cole, both asked him that, "Hey, Kai, have you been okay lately? What you guys mean?" Well, you seem a lot of and deep thoughts or daydreaming a lot, even during your chores and training. You barely focus on anything like any muchness anymore. What's the matter? It's nothing much. Just me thinking. Let me guess, Skylor? How did you know? I mean, come on. You two have been dating for 2 years, and I mean, it's clearly how much you like her, don't you? Well, yeah. I mean, who wouldn't? Well, okay, I had to be honest here. I had been actually thinking about, settle down with Skylar one day, but I told myself I want to wait if we have been together for maybe 4 to 5 years. But since we have been together for 2 years, what do you think? Said Cole. Well, 4 to 5 years sounds reasonable. And Lloyd said, well, I mean, why not? I mean, 4 to 5 years sounds reasonable to me as well. I mean, you don't want to rush into a relationship like that in a marriage, and if it end up failing, so why not? Yeah, you may be right about that," said Kai. And for the next several years, the relationship between Kai and Skylor remained strong. In fact, Skylor was really happy that this relationship between her and Kai remained such strong. Because her feelings for him only getting stronger and stronger for each single day. She didn't expecting all this to happen. And even so, after they've been dating for about 5 years, Kai felt he was ready to ask her. So when they were on a date in Yago City on a restaurant, he actually did ask her. And she said yes. He was just happy that she said yes. When they announced this to their friends and families, they were all very, very excited. Especially his friends were really overjoyed, and when Naya was told, she was over the moon, seeing her older brother Kai getting married, and she was like, "About time you actually get tied the knots. Hey, wasn't that like you, one of my friends who told me to wait for at least a few more years?" "Yeah, but I didn't expect you to get married so soon." "Well, maybe next time over the next year or so, maybe you and Jay will end up get married." "Don't tease me like that." "I wouldn't say that," said Kai with a grin. Uh, but what do you mean?" said Naya a little bit scared. Just kidding, just kidding. Hey, don't kid like that. Don't go around like that." But who knows? Who knows? Maybe Jay might have proposed to you soon enough. Who knows? I mean, you two have been together as long as me and Skylor, though. Makes sense. But they're on the wedding. Kai had asked Cole to be his best man, and Naya was asked to be Skylor's bridesmaid of honor. And at the wedding, both sides of families and friends could see how happy both Skylor and Kai were together. It was just a most amazing time. And it was just a great time, actually. And seeing how both were just happy. And as a gift, Cole, Zane, Lloyd, Naya, and Jay had arranged for a gift as their honeymoon spot for both Kai and Skylor. They were been going to spend their honeymoon for a whole week in the kingdom of Queen Vanya, a friend of theirs. They were actually surprised, but they had actually had a conversation with Vanya a little bit before this, and she agreed. And when they were there at the kingdom of Queen Vanya, they just had a great time. Skylor hasn't even been there, but Kai had, so he showed her around and just both of them had such a great time. This was one of the best moments in both their lives. And after they had been married for about 2 years, both Skylor and Kai made announcement they were expecting their first child, a boy, which they named Max. And Max, at an early age, started to show his abilities of Amber like his mother. Then, only about 4 years later, they actually have a second child, a daughter which they named Ariel. Ariel, though, she showed the same abilities as their father, the fire element. And as both Max and Ariel was older, they were sent to the monastery of Spinitzu to be training how to control the fires, to one day become the master of the element of fire and amber. And for Skylor and Kai, this was truly the happiest moments in their lives. Because after all those years ago when Kai asked Skylor to be his girlfriend, she was just happy. And ever since then, she didn't regret at all. And Kai had even told himself, if I had even asked her out, none of this would have happened. I wouldn't have found my true soulmate and have these amazing children with her and just having a great time. Kai told that once later on to Skylor, and she smiled and said the same thing. They even told this to Max and Ariel. They were just laughing and said, well, Mom, Dad, it's probably best you did end up dating after all. I mean, you two are a perfect match. I mean, your powers are almost similar already. Both Kai and Skylor laughed and said, yeah, that's pretty right. So both Skylor and Kai couldn't have been happier to be one they wanted of the most in the whole world. And this is how Kai and Skylor Chen, for their true love, got a big family together. The end.